they do have the ability, if need be,
for Dragon to continue the orbit burn to get us back to Earth's atmosphere. We'll be if some water, so they're and weights.
so
Just over 3 minutes, and we heard the core update the astronauts that we're expecting approximately 80 to 90 kilograms of propellant to be burned off, again, to lighten the load on Dragon. The first nighttime splashdown, it is nighttime. I'm
on Dragon to ground, how copy?
We've got you loud and clear, Resilience. The burn was successful with nominal performance in addition.
Okay, we copy Farfield pointing to orbit, successful burn, and were you copying any of the pilots?
And now we have views of the interior of Crew 1. We just saw Mike Hopkins, the commander, and to his side is Victor Glover, to his right-hand side.
That it's really a braking maneuver. The vehicle will be slewed or oriented so that the thrusters are pointing into the direction that the vehicle is traveling. We'll fire those thrusters for about 16.5 minutes, and that will slow Dragon enough to help it drop out of orbit and re-enter Earth's atmosphere.
At re-entry, those seats do recline, and they will recline back and up about 26 degrees in preparation for re-entry of the capsule.
In this view right now, you can see this is, I believe, the 40-degree incline or actuation. They are facing really that upper hatch, the hatch that they use to enter and exit the International Space Station. And then at their feet and to the right of that window, you can see the side hatch. That's what they use to ingress or enter Crew Dragon almost 6 months ago, November 15th, when they launched from Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And that hatch is not used from the time they launch until the time they return. That'll be the same hatch that they egress or exit later tonight. A good view of Mike Hopkins and Victor Glover, commander and pilot of this mission. And you can see they have their visors up on their helmets, so they will lower those once it's time for the leak check to make sure there's a good seal within the suit, and the teams will begin flowing nitrox into the suit and pressurizing them. And once there's confirmed a good leak check, like we said, coming up in just a little over 10 minutes from now, they'll be able to lift those visors again until it's time for re-entry.
And Mike Hopkins, the commander, is getting a bunch of different views and information from those touchscreen displays. They do provide a ton of information, especially on re-entry, things like entry angle, capsule perigee, also the time until the deorbit burn once it begins, how long it will be until it ends. They can also see exactly which Draco thrusters are firing at any given time. And again, there are 16 of those Draco thrusters on the Dragon capsule.
And it looks like we have just a signal, loss of signal, some satellite handovers potentially with Crew Dragon, and we may regain those visuals shortly, but a great look inside at our crew members as they continue their journey home. And on the Earth side of things, we've got everything moving along smoothly as well. The WB-57 aircraft departed from Ellington Field recently, and we have that aircraft equipped with thermal imaging cameras, so we look forward to the potential of seeing some infrared imagery of Crew Dragon as it begins re-entering Earth's atmosphere and through splashdown, as well as the crew members, or the team members, I should say, necessary for recovery are all aboard the Go Navigator recovery vessel that will be lifting the Crew Dragon vehicle out of the water tonight.
Yeah, it is so cool to see the astronauts in their spacesuits donned up. It's been a while since we've seen them inside. We've mainly been hearing the audio chatter back and forth between them and the core, but you know, we're at a period now where the suits are up and we've turned back on our interior cameras, and they've sort of invited us back on board with them as they continue their journey back to splashdown later on this evening.
We did get a fun look inside the capsule earlier while they were having their dinner. And the crew members were out of their suits, but they left their suits in their seats. So that was a little bit of a funny sight for a moment there. And you can see them maneuvering the displays and taking a look at exactly where they are on the map.
If you look, there's some luggage and cargo stowed right behind them. This view is sort of from the top of the Dragon capsule looking down. So where the cargo is stored, that's sort of the base of the Dragon capsule. And if you were to go all the way through the Dragon capsule, on the other side would be the trunk, which in a few hours here, we're actually going to be jettisoning to make to expose the heat shield and preparing for re-entry.
It also makes the vehicle about 6,000 pounds lighter, I believe. So that trunk will burn up upon re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere, but for now remains attached. Half of that trunk being a radiator to dispel heat from the vehicle, and the other half being solar arrays to help gather power for the vehicle. And yet again, another one of those satellite handovers, which we track, and the teams on the ground are able to track for when they will have video or audio communication with the crew members. But this view on the right-hand side of your screen is Mission Control Hawthorne here at SpaceX in California. All of the team members are monitoring the systems aboard Crew Dragon, but Crew Dragon is an autonomous vehicle, and so hopefully they remain in a monitoring mode tonight, as well as that's our hope for the astronauts too, that they can hopefully enjoy that ride home and not have to take too much action, but rather just watch the spacecraft operate as it is programmed.
And speaking of autonomy, we do have a question. We have a couple minutes here before we begin those suit leak checks. Is the returning process all controlled and handled on Earth, not on Crew One side? And as Leah mentioned, it's really the Dragon vehicle. There are some commands that...
Here, the Coast Guard have also cleared the landing area. How copy?
And we are now less than an hour from that deorbit burn. We still have a couple of milestones that need to occur.
CRS missions using the Dragon 1 vehicle also have very similar parachutes. But, you know, this is another function of their design to make sure that, again, they're not, at risk of detaching or shocking our crew members inside or the vehicles. And so that slow, gradual opening is critical to make sure that the spacecraft lands softly in the water.
And once the spacecraft does land, the parachutes will be cut away from the spacecraft. That's another autonomous function, but that keeps the vehicle from being pulled potentially by the wind. As we mentioned, that should happen autonomously, but the crew does have a button inside the spacecraft that would allow them to do so if necessary.
was old. What do I do here? So the only thing that's going to be different, like everything else is pretty much the same. So I could pass that in here. Afia Bashi.
of re-entry, and our astronauts are using the screens to monitor the locking of the nose cone, which is done by a set of those.
We are standing by for confirmation of nose cone closure. We needed to wait until this point because we were using those forward bulkhead Draco thrusters underneath to complete that deorbit burn. We did hear nominal deorbit burn, so things continue to move very smoothly for Crew Dragon Resilience on its way home from the International Space Station. So anticipated nose cone closure should come in about 1 minute.
This view here is mission control in Hawthorne. Folks supporting the astronauts' return. We are expecting a planned communication blackout period at 11:43 p.m. Pacific time. That is when we have a ton of plasma buildup at the bottom of the capsule. It's going to start to interfere with some of the communications, but that is planned and should last for about 7.5 minutes. At that time, the Dragon spacecraft will continue to steer and pilot itself towards the target landing site off the coast of Panama City until we get those communications back and once again get talks with the astronauts.
And we just heard a call that nose cone closure is about 50% complete, so that continues, and we are tracking for that to be complete momentarily. That nose cone protects the forward hatch that the astronauts use to ingress, re-enter, and egress or exit the International Space Station. So it's important that we're able to protect that area for potential future reuse of this capsule. We're standing by for confirmation that the nose cone has fully closed. The next major milestone we'll be looking for is the entry of the vehicle and that anticipated loss of signal with the spacecraft. Entry of the vehicle should begin around 11:45, so about 23 minutes from now, and we will be tracking the vehicle its entire way back, even though we don't necessarily have telemetry with it.
Those vehicles, the vehicle starts to make its way back to Earth. The astronauts on board should experience a peak of 3 to 5 Gs, similar to what they would experience on ascent of Falcon 9. And then the drogue chutes will deploy, and the main chutes will also deploy after that. And then we can start to begin recovery operations in this nighttime splashdown.
We're standing by for information about the nose cone closure. The forward hatch now being protected, those 4 forward bulkhead Draco thrusters underneath.
As we begin the second half of entry, Dragon is now beginning to flush nitrox into the cabin and continuing to top off Mike, Victor, Shannon, and Soichi's suits with cold air. Again, this is what will allow the cabin temperature to remain comfortable while external temperatures reach over 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. The heat shield is pointing forward the bottom, so to speak, of the capsule, leading the capsule into the landing site. And the suits themselves can detect if they start to get too warm and automatically start drawing in that nitrox again to keep the astronauts nice and cool all the way down until splashdown.
So we have some time until that next major milestone, as we discussed. For those who will be looking for that loss of signal, that could come as early as 11:43 with our re-entry to Earth's atmosphere at about 11:45, so 20 minutes from now. Mike, Victor, Shannon, and Soichi, as we've noticed, they are monitoring the actions throughout this procedure, and they should be able to continue to do so throughout the splashdown of Crew Dragon. They shouldn't have to take any action. Dragon is a fully autonomous vehicle, and so it
use of a great, excellent, if I may say. Wind speeds are very low, and the height of the waves are also very low. So rain in the area, so really ideal conditions for splashdown and recovery of the crew. Once they splash down, there are a couple boats that will step in to make sure that the area is safe. They'll collect the chutes, and then there is a larger recovery vessel, the same vessel that sort of took the picture of the dolphin earlier, that will come up the scuba dragon out of the water, hoist it using a crane on the back of the boat onto the deck, and then we have a couple of checkout procedures to get through before we open up the hatch, and medical staff can start to attend and evaluate how the astronauts are doing before they, eventually get to the helicopter and start to make their way back towards land.
And as I mentioned, we were initially looking at returning these astronauts on the Wednesday the 28th, having them lift off from the International Space Station. And then we looked at Friday, April 30th, so just yesterday, and we were really waiting on perfect weather conditions, which is what we're seeing tonight. And so just a little bit more about exactly what that means and what those parameters are like for us when we're considering splashdown locations. We want the wind to be no greater than 10.5 knots, which is about 17.7 feet per second. And the latest reports we have, the wind is around 2 knots, so very much within that range. We'll leave no lightning within or no less than 10 miles away, or no more.
Dragon SpaceX, we show nose cone secure for entry. And that's what our resilience we see the same.
And good news being relayed to the Crew Dragon crew that nose cone is closed. But a little bit more about that recovery criteria. We were talking about lightning. We don't want that within the 10-mile radius and away or within the vehicle area, as well as no more than 25% chance of rain. We don't want any clouds lower than 500 feet, which means the cloud ceiling. We don't want that any lower than 500 feet. And we need at least a mile of visibility for a night splashdown. So everything is really lining up perfectly for splashdown tonight, and we're continuing to watch Crew Dragon execute all of the pre-programmed maneuvers. The next major one now with the nose cone secured, all of those nose secured, we'll be looking for really re-entry.
And once the Dragon spacecraft splashes down, we typically try to target about an hour before we can, get in there, recover the vessel, and open up the hatch. But it'll depend. It'll depend on, if there's any hypergolic vapors in the air, how fast the boats can get to the capsule. But certainly expediency is of the utmost urgency for us. So the recovery team will certainly try their best to make sure the astronauts are in good, safe hands on the boat, eventually the helicopter, as soon as we can do so safely.
Yeah, and we hope to see the crew egress or exit Dragon within an hour after splashing down, which is really an impressive timeline. And so as soon as splashdown occurs, those two fast boats will begin proceeding toward the vehicle. They'll be sniffing for those hypergolic fuels. Don't want any of those toxic fumes within the vicinity of the capsule. And we will have one person go onto the capsule and begin to rig it or prepare it to be lifted out of the water. And once the recovery ship backs up to the vehicle, they can connect out to the ship and lift it onto the ship. So, and that all can happen within about a 30-minute time frame. Things are really moving quickly now with the start of entry, descent, landing, a lot of milestones happening. So we hope that you'll stay tuned with us for all of those.
The Dragon spacecraft itself is not intimidated. Its deorbit, its altitude is starting to decrease. Where eventually it'll start to leave the Earth's atmosphere. And once it does, it's moving. It was moving at over 17,500 miles an hour. So we'll start to eventually slow it down all the way to 16 miles an hour. And that's generally the rate at which, the speed at which it will splash down in the ocean.
also have that loss of communications Andy was just discussing. But right now, still very exciting to be able to have this view from the International Space Station of Crew Dragon, which just departed. That command being sent 6 hours ago for those folks to open on the nose cone in those 2 short bursts to separate it from the International Space Station. So a lot can happen in 6 hours, as we've seen, and a lot can also happen in 30 minutes because in that amount of time, Crew Dragon will be back on Earth.
And those sort of quick movements, that is not Crew Dragon. That is not Crew Dragon moving in space. That is the camera repositioning itself. So Crew Dragon right now is really on a controlled sort of slow descent back towards Earth. But it is quite cool that the International Space Station can still and has been tracking Crew Dragon all the way since it separated earlier on today.
Taking a look at what the crew aboard the International Space Station is doing, some of them are actually in their sleep period. So they may be asleep right now, and they also may be, who knows, up in the middle of the night. And
I'm sure some of them are very eager to make sure that they're, Dragon SpaceX for entry brief. And go for entry brief. Everything continues to look awesome. So no updates to timing, no updates for systems. Weather is winds at 3 knots, wave hot, wave remains less than 1 foot. Wave period still at 5 seconds. Recovery team reports in position, ready to support. Okay, no changes to timeline. Everything's looking good. 3 knots on the wind. In 5 seconds on the period. We're currently showing 220. And we'll start entry brief and we'll give you Okay, SpaceX companies, thank you. As the folks on the crew capsule itself, when your core calls you, it says everything continues to look awesome. That is probably the greatest of great news as the capsule is gearing up for re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere. Eventually splash down here within the hour. As I was mentioning earlier, the crew on the International Space Station, they might be up right now. I'm sure they're very eager to see that, to make sure that their fellow crew members are safely back home on Earth. So, they might be tuning in to make sure that everything goes smoothly before they head off to bed.
And meanwhile, on Earth, this is the view that we had earlier from Go Navigator and the recovery vessel that we'll see lift Crew Dragon out of the water later on. They had another visitor. Outer space is a pretty amazing place to explore, and I think the ocean is as well. And so this is one of the local residents in the area of Go Navigator at the time. Go Navigator has now moved closer to the location of splashdown, and they will then move in once the vehicle has made contact with the water to then retrieve it.
Maybe that's a foreshadowing of the future zero-G indicator. We haven't had a marine animal fly in space yet, so maybe the next one will be a dolphin.
That's not a bad idea.
This view right now is, again, from the International Space Station. That white dot center screen is the Dragon capsule. The crew is inside there. We're continuing to adjust the cameras, but it continues to make its way back towards Earth.
And those cameras can be adjusted by teams on the ground in Mission Control Houston. So, as you mentioned, the astronauts still on the International Space Station have the opportunity to be getting some sleep now. They very well might be watching coverage, and we thank them as well for tuning in. But yeah, just an amazing view for us to get to see this image of Crew Dragon still in space, counting down to that beginning of re-entry. It all happens very fast once that begins, and we are looking for re-entry to begin at 11:45, so less than 10 minutes from now.
SpaceX copy is on tablets, restraints, and visor away from splashdown. Here's the rundown again, what to expect here in the next 20 minutes. At 11:43 p.m.
We're going to enter that communications blackout period that will last for approximately 7.5 minutes. At 11:45 p.m., entry will begin. That is where the capsule will enter the Earth's atmosphere. 11:52 p.m., the drogue chutes will deploy. Then less than a minute after that, the main chutes will deploy, slowing the Dragon spacecraft down to 16 miles an hour. Then at 11:57 p.m. Pacific time, we have splashdown of the Crew 1 Resilience capsule.
Dragon SpaceX, we show 5 minutes until predicted comm blackout. We will see you on the other side at 0650.
And SpaceX Resilience copies. We'll talk to you on the other side.
And there was that blackout period that I had mentioned earlier. That is the core. Just confirming again the time and the expectation that there will be a blackout period at approximately 11:43 p.m. Pacific time for 7.5 minutes. Again, the Dragon vehicle is autonomous and really steering itself at this point. So even though communications can't be sent back and forth between Dragon and ground, the vehicle is really doing its own thing and making sure that it reaches the targeted landing site as intended.
We are 4 minutes away from that predicted loss of signal. And this is something that occurs whenever we bring home crewed spacecraft, whether it be a Crew Dragon or a Soyuz spacecraft. Their re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere looks very similar. They both have a deorbit burn, and they both slow down significantly upon re-entry into Earth's atmosphere. And that plasma buildup outside of the vehicle, along with that heat, that prevents us from having communications with the vehicle for several minutes. This time we're looking at about 7 minutes. So it's something that we're very aware of and experienced with. And something else we are just learning is Crew Dragon is about 140 kilometers in altitude. So we continue to track its journey back to Earth. We are now, what it looks like, 3 minutes away from that anticipated LOS.
So yeah, Leah and I will continue to be with you live, not just until splashdown, but afterwards as part of the recovery operations as well. We'll want to make sure that the team is picked up out of the water and safe and sound on the Go Navigator boat before we sign off. So we still got a bit of time here, but we do have quite a bit of events coming up in the next hour and a half until the crew is safely back on Earth.
And speaking of recovery, that leads into a Launch America question that we have. Do any medical checkups happen after the return of Crew 1 back on Earth? Yes, that's actually the first thing that happens once Crew 1 returns and is hoisted onto the ship. The first person inside the hatch will be a medical doctor that speaks with the crew and allows them to let them know how they're feeling ahead of egress or being taken out of the vehicle. And as soon as that happens, they'll be moved in for some further medical checks ahead of being flown back on a helicopter to shore in Florida. So that'll be the first thing that happens. Safety of our crew and their health is our priority.
Yeah, and part of landing selection slides, one of the criteria is we have to be close to medical facilities. So everything is really planned around the safety of the astronauts and make sure that they come back nice and healthy because they've had such rigorous sort of time up in space, being in microgravity and now returning back to Earth and having to deal with the gravity down here. And so, like Leah mentioned, medical staff will be one of the first people that speak to the astronauts as soon as they land here on Earth.
We just heard that Dragon is in entry attitude, exactly where they need to be. And for this targeted splashdown off the coast of Panama City, Florida, we have that loss of signal that we predict to occur coming up in about 1 minute. And we expect to see that last for about 7 minutes. Hearing our altitude is approximately 108 kilometers above Earth. And as a reminder, our 4 crew members, Mike Hopkins, Victor Glover, Shannon Walker, and Suichi Noguchi, all on board Crew Dragon, returning home today. They are monitoring this process, and so they are well aware that we may lose communications with them as soon as within 30 seconds, and we will speak with them once we are out of that comms blackout period, again, lasting about 7 minutes today. We're standing by for that LOS under 100 kilometers in altitude.
And shortly after we begin that communications blackout period, 11:45 p.m. Pacific time, that is when the spacecraft will enter the Earth's atmosphere and begin, sort of its final descent back to a splashdown.
Altitude of Crew Dragon now at 90 kilometers, and this view on the right hand side of your screen, and Mission Control Hawthorne here in California, teams monitoring the vehicle, and during this loss of signal point, this communications blackout, they won't be able to get telemetry on the vehicle, but Crew Dragon is totally autonomous.
So at this point, we are entering that communications blackout period. This will last approximately 7.5 minutes due to plasma formation around the spacecraft. During this time, no vehicle telemetry is received by Mission Control or the recovery team, and no external commanding of the vehicle or voice communication is possible. And just as a reminder, Dragon is designed to fly itself and continues to autonomously use Draco thrusters to orient itself during re-entry. During re-entry, the vehicle will be slowing down from orbital velocity, which is approximately 17,500 miles per hour, and the top temperature around Dragon, that Dragon will experience upon re-entry, is about 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit.
And of course, inside the capsule, it will not get near that hot. We expect the temperature to raise to about 85 degrees. And the astronauts have cool air inside the vehicle as well as inside their suits. And so we have just entered the time of entry interface. So Dragon is now experiencing the Earth's atmosphere for the first time in almost 6 months. So we are continuing to be in this LOS period. As we mentioned, it should last about 7 minutes, and that began at 11:43 p.m. Pacific time. So we have about 4 minutes left of that LOS period, and the crew knows that we will be in communication with them on the other side.
And this has got to be the period where, if you followed Bob and Doug's re-entry, they had described Dragon as sort of coming back to life when it re-enters the atmosphere. So again, those temperatures are caused by friction. So the spacecraft itself is moving at such a high rate of speed that it's hitting all these air particles, and so it's got to be the vibration levels and the sound has got to be sort of elevated at this point as it continues to go through the Earth's atmosphere.
Yeah, and as we mentioned, this is the first time that the vehicle has felt this lift and this drag since launch. The atmosphere in space that doesn't exist, and so it's a vacuum, and haven't been feeling this and been able to hear those sounds that you were discussing. So it's quite a different moment after having 6 months in microgravity. They will begin to start feeling some Gs, as we mentioned, between 3 and 5 Gs upon their re-entry. And we are standing by. It's been about 4 minutes now since that loss of signal began. That's an estimated 7 minutes. The plasma is building up on the outside of the capsule as it continues entering the Earth's atmosphere. The temperatures around the capsule building up to 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. And this view from our WV-57 aircraft with its thermal imaging cameras, we will be looking for the Crew Dragon to come into view, and there you can see it in the entry of Earth's atmosphere. Crew Dragon continuing its journey home.
So there's a material on the bottom of the capsule. PICA 3.0 stands for phenolic impregnated carbon ablator. That is the material that is really shielding the capsule from all of that extreme temperature. And so the capsule itself goes in sort of bottom first, and that lightweight material, and that is just a fantastic shot. That is the Dragon.
Wow.
Re-entering the Earth's atmosphere as it leaves that trail behind, and then again that illumination is from all of that heat that is building up due to friction of just the re-entry speeds of Dragon when it meets the Earth's atmosphere.
And that view coming from the boat, Go Navigator. Crew Dragon continuing, as you said, to enter Earth's atmosphere. So having these two views right now, with it being a nighttime splashdown, pretty exciting that we're getting two good views upon re-entry into Earth's atmosphere.
So again, a lot of things are happening pretty rapidly here. In about 3 minutes, the first set of parachutes will deploy. They are drogue chutes. They are conical in nature, and their job is to stabilize and begin sort of the initial deceleration of the vehicle, followed very shortly after by the main parachutes. There are 4 of them.
Dragon, SpaceX, comm check.
And SpaceX, this is Dragon, over 4Gs, 42 kilometers.
SpaceX, we have you loud and clear. Expect automated chute deployment.
And Resilience copies. We are at 40 kilometers, 4.34 on the Gs.
That's Commander Mike Hopkins reporting the Gs that they experienced upon reentry. And as you heard, we are now out of that loss of signal portion, meaning the plasma has eroded away enough from the spacecraft.
I think my heart skipped a beat as soon as I heard the crew responding back. And you know, one thing I did note, as soon as Mike turned on his comms, there was a lot of background noise, and that is sort of you know, the
I'm not with my phone.
The first, remember how like was it 2 months ago now? They've been up there this whole time. They sent up astronauts from the US and SpaceX rockets on their brand new Dragon crew capsules.
Yeah.
So the first crew is currently returning to Earth, and it's crazy. It's like it's the 1970s. Because what they did in the 70s, they sent them up to the Apollo missions and Gemini missions. They had these capsules that would come back. You know, those little cones and the heat shielding. And then in the 80s and the 90s, early 2000s, they had the space shuttle. And so it's like you can see the space shuttle. It's like a space shuttle plane, right? And then they're like, yeah, space shuttle's a really bad idea. They canceled the space shuttle program. And then SpaceX is like, yeah, we're going to come and try to land these things with the crew in them. But actually, it's probably the way they were doing it for the Mercury missions was probably the best way to do it. And so we're back to using these capsules. And that's what, like, the Dragon capsules are now like the Mercury capsules, except they're extremely high tech. Not that that matters, but you can see them sitting in, like, they've got shots of these guys sitting in the capsule. It's like, you can see all the high tech computers, like right here.
Yeah.
It's them just sitting in the capsule. They've got like AC going on in there. They've got this gases that's cooling them in their suits, so it doesn't get any hotter than like 85 degrees, even though it's like thousands of degrees around them as they come in. It's crazy. There they are. Just like chilling. It's all automated. They don't have to do jack shit. This guy's sleeping. Anyway, so like right now, this capsule is falling down to the ocean. And when I when I texted you, because it's the pinnacle of technology for the species, and and I texted you just a minute ago because just the capsule going 17,000 miles an hour just entered the atmosphere, and you could see the heat, the trail of fire basically, because the shield will like burn off as it comes through the atmosphere, and you can see the fire streak as it comes through. And they're just sitting there chilling. They're just like, yeah, this is pretty smooth. It's shaking around a little bit. They're like, it's all right. Oh, the shoots just came out. Nice. You want to watch? You don't want to see?
SpaceX copies and concurs nominal descent right on 2 drones.
90,000 people watching right now.
2 drone shoots have deployed. Everything looks nominal, and we're slowing the Dragon vehicle down. We are expecting the 4 main shoots to deploy within the next minute.
You guys watching this? You should be watching this. This is amazing.
And those 4 drone shoots, you can see them being pulled out now.
Visual on 4 mains.
Look at that. Switch over to a better
SpaceX
camera.
copies and concurs nominal descent rate.
And this view coming from the WB-57, very clear image of those 4 main parachutes, slowing the vehicle down to what will be about 16 miles per hour prior to splashdown just off the coast of Panama City, Florida. If it were daylight, we would have an image of those 4 beautiful parachutes being orange and
Oh, it's a nighttime splashdown. That's why.
and still getting these incredible views, even though we are in
I'm in Australia, so right now it's 5 p.m.
So we are waiting for visuals of splashdown. The Dragon 1 program had a great success with water landing with 20 successful splashdowns over the course of that program, 9 of which were carried out by flight.
9 of which were carried out by flight
I gotta turn
proven
this
Dragon
thing
spacecraft.
into. I gotta get rid of these.
In space height, you've broken, but we show you just under 800 meters. Still good descent rate.
Just under 800 meters from the Earth. That's about half of a mile. And we are tracking splashdown.
And 600 meters, and we're showing 10 meters per second on the descent rate, a little higher than nominal.
Wow.
SpaceX copies.
And what a view we have here. Even though it's nighttime, we have some great visuals of Dragon there with its 4 main chutes deployed, slowly coming back to Earth. Splashdown is scheduled for just a few minutes from now.
400 meters.
Now just a quarter a mile away from splashdown. And that splashdown time is scheduled for 11:57 p.m. Pacific time.
And SpaceX, we show nominal descent rates, 200 meters, brace for splashdown.
SpaceX copies. Brace for splashdown.
That is cool.
Seconds away from splashdown, everything nominal aboard Crew Dragon Resilience returning to Earth.
And there are the boats starting to chase after Dragon to begin their recovery operations as soon as Dragon lands. And I don't know if you can hear the applause,
on splashdown.
but we have visual confirmation of the Crew 1 Resilience
SpaceX
capsule.
from Resilience. That is excellent news. We are splashed down. We pyros have fired or water.
SpaceX copies and concurs. We do see mains cut as well.
So again, you heard the applause. The Crew 1 capsule has returned, and we have successful splashdown. The main chutes have also cut as well. The fast boats are now making their way towards the capsule to begin the recovery operations. Again, that first boat is going to start to inspect the capsule and make sure that there isn't any residual toxic fumes in the air.
Dragon, on behalf of NASA and the SpaceX teams, we welcome you back to planet Earth, and thanks for flying SpaceX. For those of you enrolled in our frequent flyer program, you have earned 68 million miles on this voyage.
And SpaceX Resilience, it is back on planet Earth, and we'll take those miles. Are they transferable?
And Dragon will have to refer you to our marketing department for that policy.
And we are in 1. That's 3.1 of 4.800.
And Resilience, please repeat last about 4.800.
Okay, we are at 3, and we show stable 1.
SpaceX copies stable 1. Good news.
So a bit of levity from the crew and the core about the transferable mileage.
And that splashdown coming at 11:56 p.m. Pacific time, 6:56 GMT. We're hearing reports that the capsule is in stable 1 position, meaning it is upright. As we heard, those 4 main parachutes were cut, and those 2 fast boats will soon approach the vehicle. They will be able to, as we mentioned, sniff for those hypergol fuels, as well as attach buoys to the parachutes and make sure they are recovered. The teams have been ready and waiting about 3 nautical.
Yeah, it's my jam. Probably 7 regulars too. The original is too expensive. This is also good.